Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Show. This will be the first video of the 2021 season. I want to go over my top 100 players for a standard 5x5 Roto League. To the left is a Word document I created with my top 100 rankings, and to the right is the only ADP data we have so far provided by Fangraphs. It's from the two early mocks. A lot of industry folks do it, so you can trust that this screen to the right is going to give you the best gauge of where guys are going to be going come draft day. The first top 10 players, I'm going to try to break it down, compare where I'm taking guys and where the ADP is, because it's really important to find value, of course. I go over this a lot in my other videos, but it's really important to find value in drafts, find guys you like, but most importantly, in these early rounds, eliminate guys that you don't like as much as the consensus. So right off the bat, I'll point out one guy who I have 5 ranks lower than the consensus ADP, and that's Fernando Tatis. Great player. I say this a lot about guys when I attack them. These are great players. I'm not saying these guys aren't great players, but in these first 3 to 5 rounds, especially, I mean the whole draft in general, but these first 3 to 5 rounds, I really want guys with the highest floor, of course high ceilings, but I don't want to risk a guy whose floor can bottom out. And Tatis is a guy where I think, and Acuna is similar too, because they don't have the plate discipline and the on-base percentage as these other players like Mookie Betts or Mike Trout. They do steal the bases though. But Tatis's plate discipline scares me a little bit. He's still a top 10 player, but I would personally rather have Trevor Story and Trey Turner over Fernando Tatis. That's just 2 shortstops right off the bat. I'm telling you that I would rather have Trey Turner and Trevor Story than Fernando Tatis. They've been doing it longer. They're way more reliable. I think Tatis has the chance to steal the most bases, especially more than Trevor Story. But I think both Story and Turner are safer options. Also, I don't have Shane Bieber in my top 10. The ADP does have Shane Bieber. I instead have Bellinger and Yelich. And I was apprehensive to even put them there. I was surprised when I saw that I had Bellinger and Yelich higher than the consensus ADP. I thought Bellinger and Yelich were still going to be top 10 players. Bellinger's shown in the postseason. He's fine. Yelich, the thing with Yelich is if he just had those amazing years, that amazing year and a half he had with the Brewers, I could see why people would be a little scared of him if he came out of nowhere like that. But he was already a great player for the Miami Marlins. He just didn't have great pop yet. He was already a 280, 290 hitter, hit to all fields. I think maybe Yelich just got a little too home run happy, and hopefully he gets more contact oriented. Maybe he's not going to have the same power he's always had. Maybe because of that he's not going to be that first round value. But that floor, I think, is so high for Yelich. And that might sound weird because he had such a horrendous 2020. But it was a crazy season for a lot of guys. And I just think the skills are there. The plate discipline's there. The eye is there. He's a good contact hitter. I'm not scared that Yelich forgot how to hit. He was always a fundamentally great hitter with a great swing and a contact-first guy. He was always a contact-first guy. And I like contact-first guys. So that's the first 10 players. The big differences I spotted right away. Garrett Cole, I'm right with the consensus. Freddie Freeman, I'm right with the consensus. Juan Soto, Mike Trout, Acuna, I'm right with the consensus for all those guys. DeGrom, I'm 1 rank higher than consensus with DeGrom. He's definitely the best starting pitcher in the major leagues, as I've said last year, and it's proven again. One thing I found funny. One guy I want to point out before I get into this though is Ozzie Albies is a guy I want to target, and Xander Bogaerts is a guy I want to target. They're ranked 27th and 28th according to consensus ADP. I have Bogaerts 18th and Albies 15th, so that's 10 ranks higher. I think when it comes to floor, it doesn't get any safer than Xander Bogaerts. The reason, of course, he's lower than Trey Turner and Trevor Story is because he doesn't have the stolen bases, but he still gets a couple steals. He's not a 0 in the category. He's good for a 10 or 15. But if you don't get one of those 3 guys in Tatis, Turner, or Story, then definitely look for Xander Bogaerts. And with second base being so thin, I really want to have Albies on my team this year. If I'm picking at the end of the, in the 12 to 13 pick, I want to maybe pick Freeman and Albies, or if Freeman's taken, Bregman and Albies, or maybe Rendon and Albies. I think Albies is one of the safest guys, and he'll get some steals. Rendon's not going to get you any steals, and it's kind of important that one of these offensive guys, and that may be Freeman's biggest knock, is Freeman's not going to get you any steals. When you're picking a hitter in these top 2 rounds, you want to try to get a Tatis or a Story or a Turner or an Albies or a Jose Ramirez because they're going to get you steals. Freeman's not going to get you steals. Trout's going to get you less steals than he ever has. But I digress. What I wanted to talk about before, what I found peculiar when comparing the consensus ADP to my rankings, was that I'm higher on Walker Buehler than the consensus. And I find that funny because if you go back and watch my ADP videos from last year, I was super high on Yu Darvish and Trevor Bauer. Now the consensus has Yu Darvish at 19th, Trevor Bauer at 17th. I have Walker Buehler at 20th, Yu Darvish at 24th, and Trevor Bauer at 25th. So those are my guys. This isn't me shafting them. I just think Buehler has the makings to be a more consistent pitcher, a less volatile pitcher, and I think, he's shown in the postseason. I don't want to conflate postseason success too much. I'll get into that later with Rosarena. I don't want to over-exaggerate postseason success, of course. But Buehler, I think, has the makings of an incredible starting pitcher. When DeGrom drops off, I think Buehler will take his place as the best. I don't think it's going to be Shane Bieber either. Now, I want to talk about Shane Bieber too while I'm at it. Shane Bieber and Trevor Bauer and Yu Darvish, so this all works in perfectly. I didn't even remember this. They all pitched in the Central Division this year. The Central Division this year for National League and American League teams was the AL, of course, and the NL Central. It was the easiest division to pitch in. Next year, they're going to have to verse other teams that they did not verse this year. It's not going to be nearly as easy as a year that they had this year. So I don't think Shane Bieber or Trevor Bauer or Yu Darvish are going to return the same stats they had this year. That's purely based on the division they pitched in. I've talked to some other prominent fantasy baseball players about this. They agree AL Central was a very, very easy division to pitch in. This isn't making up. This is a very obvious talking point. You'll hear a lot of people talk about it. So beware of that with Bauer, Darvish, and Bieber. I think they had a really kind of easy. I hate to call it easy. They had an easy schedule. They had a relatively walk in the park when it comes to their facing. A lot of White Sox, a lot of Royals. I think I'm higher on LeMahieu than the consensus. I have LeMahieu 21st. The consensus has him at 34th. Obviously, that's because of stolen bases. This is a Roto League, so I get why he's not as highly ranked. If this is a points league, LeMahieu is without a doubt a first or second rounder, probably a first rounder. But I think LeMahieu, for that floor, again, I'm going to go back to that word a lot. For that floor, I love LeMahieu. If I can get him before pick 30, I will reach and do that. Because he's going to get you 20, 25 home runs, maybe 30 home runs. He's going to hit 290, 300, maybe 330. He's going to get you 100 runs, 100 RBIs. I just love that. I love LeMahieu. Great value. One of the guys I was super surprised about, and take notes on this one right here, Max Scherzer. That's the guy I'm avoiding. That Max Scherzer, a good comp to last year, was Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander was going about 18 to 20 last year. With an arm injury, it was a little shaky. He was getting older. Max Scherzer, I'm gonna predict same thing for Scherzer this year. I don't see him throwing 200 innings. I see injuries. I see him on a decline. So if someone wants to pay that 23rd overall for him, go ahead. He's going around Arenado, which is ridiculous. But go ahead. I have Scherzer probably down at 40th. We'll show him later. Also, Giolito, another guy in the AL Central. Yeah, great pitcher. I'm not getting Giolito 24th. Just like I'm not getting Bauer, Darvish. When you got Bauer, Darvish, and Giolito, you should have drafted them last year. You don't spend your second round, third round pick this year on pitchers who might have had their career year. I love Luis Castillo, but I'm not picking him this early. This gets to a broader point that I'm going to discuss, and I'll obviously get into this when ADP comes out. This is a very early video to start talking about ADP strategy. But I don't want to take maybe any starting pitcher. I don't want to say any starting pitcher. Any starting pitcher besides DeGrom and Buehler within the first 3 rounds. I don't even want to take Garrett. Maybe DeGrom, Buehler, Garrett Cole within the first 3 rounds. Because I think there's guys we can find later. I'll talk about them later. Corbin Burns, Ian Anderson, all those Marlins pitchers, Sixto Sanchez, Pablo Lopez, Max Fried on the Braves. There's a lot of interesting pitchers. The Dylan Peterson, Nate Pearson, a lot of interesting guys that you can get. And I don't want to pay a third round price for guys like Aaron Nola, Luis Castillo. It's just a scary thing. It's like paying for Alberto Mondesi on the 33rd pick. It's a little scary. One of the guys that I was happily surprised about was I have Bo Bichette at 23rd, and consensus has Bo Bichette at 20th overall. I thought I was higher on Bichette. That's the steals and the batting average. Okay, he's not the best on bases. On base is 350, but he bats 300. He's going to get you 25, 30 stolen bases with 30 home runs. He's a 30-30 guy. So look out for Bichette. And I usually am scared of guys with a batting average on base percentage differential like that, where he's not a 300 400, he's a 300 350, if you know what I'm saying. So but I don't get as scared with Bichette because he reminds me of Corey Seager. I'm not scared that Corey Seager is going to forget how to hit it and hit 220 230. I think there's certain guys who just don't maybe walk as much, but they have the bat skills. They don't strike out a lot. He's not swinging out of his shoes. So Bichette is definitely a guy you want to target. I would take him over, of course, Darvish, Bauer. I think I have Kershaw higher than the consensus, but I'm not positive about that. I can't see Kershaw. Oh, Kershaw's 29th from consensus ADP. I have Kershaw 27th, so only 2 points higher. Nothing to really talk about there. Keep going. 24th. Aaron Nola's another guy. Don't really want to draft Aaron Nola. I mentioned that. Alex Bregman, I have 14th. Consensus has Alex Bregman at 31st. He was a first, second rounder last year. Yeah, he had a rough year. Guy was a number 2 overall pick. He walks more than he strikes out. I'm not scared that Alex Bregman's going to struggle. I'm definitely taking Alex Bregman at 31st. That's what his ADP really helps. If you know you can wait for Alex Bregman, you definitely take one of those pitchers early. Great value there for Alex Bregman. Francisco Lindor. I'm not sure where he's going for a consensus ADP. 15th. I have Francisco Lindor at 28th. I've never been a Lindor guy. I've talked about that last year. I don't know if I get it with Lindor. He doesn't steal a ton of bases. I mean, he does steal bases, but he's not stealing 40 bases like Turner and Story can and Tatis. He's not hitting 40 home runs. He's a really great player, but I'm not paying first, second round value for Francisco Lindor. I think he's one of the guys maybe where his fielding leaks into fantasy too much. And it's like, yeah, he's a great fielder, but we don't get points for fielding in fantasy. He's definitely a better real life player than a fantasy baseball player with his base run and all that. It doesn't necessarily translate 1-to-1 in fantasy baseball. Keep going. Michael Brantley, I have at 29th overall. I'm going down the list here. I don't even see Michael Brantley on here. So that just shows you I might be too high on Michael Brantley. You might not want to take Michael Brantley at 29th overall. But he's a 4th rounder, 5th rounder. This is a guy that I want to target in on. Is JT Realmuto. I think you have to really think about your catching position strategy this year. Of course, every year. But last year, I was a big proponent on drafting Realmuto in the 3rd, 4th round, especially in 15-teamers and 2-catcher leagues. If you're in a 15-team, 2-catcher league, he's probably a 2nd round value. He plays 140 games. He's going to steal you 15 bases. He's going to hit you 25, 30 home runs. He's going to bat 280. Maybe less now, but more power if he bats less. It seems like he might have sold out a little bit for power. So Realmuto is definitely worth it. Wherever you can take Realmuto, obviously within a reasonable thing, 2nd, 3rd round, I think you go ahead and you take him, especially in a 2-catcher league. Points league is a little different because just hitters don't matter as much maybe in a points league. I'm not saying it's just different because you're targeting pitchers more in a points league. Don't think about points league in this video. This is a Roto video. Kyle Tucker, I have at 34th. ADP has him at 39th. So Kyle Tucker is definitely a guy that you should be looking out for this year. Starting Marte, I'm just about in line with consensus. I'm really surprised with how much my ADP has aligned. Here's a guy, though, I'm definitely higher on, Ketel Marte. He still hit 300 this year. He just didn't have any pop. It's kind of a Christian Yelich situation, except Marte kept hitting. Yelich stopped hitting. So Ketel Marte is definitely a guy. I liked him since 2016, 2017 when he really was kind of a fringe guy. And I thought I was maybe a little too enamored with him because I liked the way his swing was. Low hands. I like guys with low hands to the ball. No wasted motion in his swing. Very contact oriented. Marte's a guy who I could see him improving on his 2019, which is, I know that's insane, But you don't see a lot of guys who are right to the ball like Marte, quick hands. Maybe he gets traded. I don't know. Maybe I think that lineup is hurting him a lot. I think it's hard to be an impact hitter in a lineup like Arizona. He should be a 3 hitter or maybe even a 5 hitter in other lineups, but they have him batting. I mean, I guess he's a leadoff guy too, but I think they have him batting leadoff or second. I mean, he doesn't have the raw pop for a second baseman. I mean, for a second hitter. We're getting into the 30s here. Rendon, they have at 30th overall. I had Rendon at 17th. That's kind of surprising. He had a great year. Maybe that's just a stolen base thing. You have to counter in for stolen bases. Maybe the fantasy community as a whole is focusing more on stolen bases than they have, which means you might get a lot of values on guys like Rendon, LeMahieu, and Bregman. And you can avoid guys like Alberto Mondesi at 33 because he can't effing hit. Alberto Mondesi should be going in maybe round 60th overall, not 33rd overall. That's a guy that can really screw up your team if he doesn't hit, which is a high probability. That's the definition of a low floor, high ceiling player, Alberto Mondesi. I have Abreu a lot lower than the consensus. I don't have Abreu at 35. I have him maybe at 50th. I'll show that later. I'm surprised here. Surprised that Voit is this high. I'm surprised that Woodruff is ahead of Corbin Burns. I don't know where Machado is. I mean, this is really surprising seeing where some of these guys are going. I'm gonna just stick to my list now because it really feels like this consensus ADP is starting to drift a lot, and there's a lot of guys falling back that I'm just far behind on. So let me just dial on my list. Luis Castillo, they had him up at 20th. I have him at 36th. If you can get him in the 3rd or 4th round, take Castillo. Austin Meadows, great value. Where I have him, I'm not even sure where he's at in the ADP. Austin Meadows, a guy you want to target based on where the ADP is going. Brandon Lau, I talked about how shallow second base is. I think Brandon Lau is the second best second baseman in baseball. Definitely get Brandon Lau. Machado struggled to start the season, but he showed. And Machado's not a guy I was high on. But I wasn't high on him because he used to be a second first rounder. If you get Machado in the 3rd, 4th round, that's where Machado should go. Machado, I think this is an overreaction of Machado now. But maybe it's a correction, I guess. But the thing is, I like to draft guys who I think are going to increase in value next year. I think Machado is going to be going 30th overall next year. So if I get him at 40, and I think they have him going lower than that, I would love to get Machado there. Dominic Smith and Mike Yastrzemski, 2 guys who had great seasons, 2 guys who had great second halves of 2019 and continued to 2020. Love both those guys. Not too much to talk about there. Just great lefty hitters. Whit Merrifield, I have him just with the consensus. You want the steals, you want that batting average, get Whit Merrifield. He is getting older though, so beware. Kevin Biggio, that batting average is a little suspect, but he has a great stolen base rate. He's going to steal some bases for you. Now this is where I think it gets really interesting. 45 Corbin Burns. If you want a little prop bet, Cy Young prop bet, I would bet on Corbin Burns. It's probably get good odds on that. I think Corbin Burns could be one of the best pitchers in baseball. I will have him on almost all of my teams this year. Same with Ian Anderson. I want Ian Anderson on almost all of my teams. I have him ranked 47th. He might not even be on the top 100 for ADP. And again, Lucas Giolito, I have him at 46th. He was 25th. I'm not getting Lucas Giolito on my team. Trent Grisham, I thought I was maybe a little too high on him. But it seems like 57th, I have him at 48th. It seems like Trent Grisham, I was pretty accurate on. He will get you 15, 20 stolen bases, 25, 30 home runs, 260 batting average, but he has a solid on base, so that means his floor is a lot higher than you'd expect with a guy at a 250, 260 average. When I ran some numbers in Excel, one of the things I was most surprised about was how good Jeff McNeil was, even though he doesn't steal out of bases. The floor with the 300 batting average, the 20, 25 home runs. McNeil's a guy who I kind of avoided last year because I'm a huge Mets fan and I thought maybe I was too high on him. And maybe a lot of you guys can feel that. You feel like, oh, I'm too high on Jeff McNeil. I overestimate how good he is compared to fantasy because the power's not there. No, he's as good as you think he is. It's hard to find a 300 hitter nowadays. McNeil does that and he does it with pop. My biggest thing with McNeil is playing time concerns. He's shown he gets worn down in the season. He's obviously not a guy taking steroids. I hate to talk about steroids and stuff, but it's not talked about. McNeil's obviously a throwback guy. He's not juicing. He's just a scrawny little guy. He can't take that long season. And if DH doesn't come to National League next year, I'd be a little wary of McNeil and Dom Smith's playing time. Alec Bohm is a guy I want to get on all my teams last year. I have him as outfield. That is an accident. He is third base, first base. Alec Bohm, I definitely want on my rosters next year. I love the profile. He walks a lot, does not strike out a lot. Easy 30 home run pop, easy. The ball really just flies off his bat. Look at some videos of Alex Bohm. Very smooth, compact swing. I've heard Anthony Rendon comps. I don't really see it. Bohm has his hands higher. He kind of comes more down on the ball. Bohm has easier power than Rendon. I think Bohm will hit 40 home runs in a season. Very easy, light power. The ball really just flies off his bat. Never really seen anything quite like it. Definitely like Alec Bohm. I think he'll be a third rounder next year without a doubt. Get him on wherever you can. Jose Altuve. I didn't see him on this list yet. I'm guessing I'm higher on Jose Altuve than consensus. But I like Altuve a lot. He's not going to steal bases anymore, but 300 hitter. I think some of these guys that play Roto forget that batting average is a category. And if you're taking guys like Aaron Judge, and Jesse Winker I have right here, yeah, those guys walk a lot, but they're hitting 250, 260. Jose Altuve is going to be batting 300. I'm not worried about this year. 2020 was a short sample size. He batted 400 in some samples. Jose Altuve is a solid player. Max Muncy I have higher than the consensus apparently. That is surprising. Max Muncy's been a mainstay in baseball for the past 3 years. Consistently underrated. 30 home run pop, 260 average. I know I just talked about that. I don't think there is a guy you can count on as much as Max Muncy. Maybe it's the positional eligibility, first, second, and third. I just love the profile there. I love the pop. I like complimenting guys like McNeil, Muncy, LeMahieu, Muncy. Not just the position eligibility, but if I get a guy who maybe is, more of a batting average guy, or Conforto, who I think I might have glossed over Conforto actually. Did I? Conforto's another guy. I can't believe I haven't brought him up yet. But great pop. Should hit 40 home runs next season without a doubt. Definitely look at Conforto. Eric Hosmer, Clint Frazier, both had standout seasons. I'm higher on Eric Hosmer than consensus. I think the fly ball stuff is legit. Clint Frazier too. I think he's 35, 40 homers with a 270 batting average, 260 batting average. The bat speed's crazy. He's only going to get better, Clint Frazier. He hasn't had a lot of MLB playing time. He's kind of been gypped. See, I have Max Scherzer all the way at 60th. They had him at 20th. I'm not getting Max Scherzer. Tim Anderson, too, I think I had way higher than they had him. I have him at 59th. Tim Anderson's 49th for them, so I have him 10 rankings lower than them. It's, again, I think the batting average there, I don't really know how good the power is, and I don't know how good the steals really are. It's like 15, 20, but he's not an elite hitter like Bogarts or Albies. He's not the kind of hitter as Bogarts or Albies. So Tim Anderson, probably not going to get him, but I like him better than Mondesi. I think it's ridiculous that Tim Anderson's ranked lower than Alberto Mondesi. He's obviously a better, safer option than Alberto Mondesi, so think of that what you will. We got Pete Alonso. Well, again, I've said last year, I'm not the craziest Alonso fan for fantasy, really volatile profile. But if you can get that pop here in the 6th round, 5th round, I mean, you can get it. Personally, I'd rather get Eric Hosmer, Muncy, or LeMahieu. There's going to be plenty of first base options later. But it's not as deep as a position as it used to be. Dom Smith, I'd rather have. I'll do a positional preview later this year. It's still pretty early in the season. It's kind of hard to talk about all these things. But Alonso, I'm not too enamored with. Not really too enamored with him. Jesse Winker, that's kind of one of my guys. I probably have him too high. Especially I play in an on-base percentage league mostly, so probably not accounting for the batting average. He doesn't really steal bases. But Winker is a stud. 400 on-base percentage, 35, 40 pop. Love Jesse Winker. Tyler Glasnow showed off in the playoffs. Really like what he's shown with that curveball. Brandon Woodruff also. Notice I have Tyler Glasnow and Brandon Woodruff after Corbin Burnes. I fully think that Corbin Burnes will be better than Tyler Glasnow and Brandon Woodruff. I also have Max Fried a lot higher than consensus has him. look, Corbin Burns is down 64th for consensus ADP. I have Corbin Burns all the way at like 30th, 45th. But Max Fried doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. That's the biggest knock against him. People say I think he's a freaking stud. One of the best pitchers in baseball, top 10 without a doubt. I'm gonna eat him up all day. I'm gonna get Corbin Burns, Max Fried, Ian Anderson. Ideally, I want to incorporate draft strategy. I think it's very important to understand how you're going to be putting your team together. Ideally, I'm getting one starting pitcher within the top 3 or 4. Then after round 4, I might go 3 starting pitchers out of 4 next picks. So first 4 rounds, I'm getting one starting pitcher. The next 4 rounds, I want to get 3 starting pitchers. It's kind of I would call it a back end top heavy approach. I say that because the first 8 rounds is the back end of the top of the draft. I mean, you have 25 picks in the draft. Why I'm not saying you're spending 4 of your first 8 picks on pitchers is because I don't think it's smart to spend any more than 1 of your first 4 picks on a starting pitcher. Pitchers are historically more volatile than hitters. They're historically more likely to get hurt than hitters. So, and I know people have different philosophies, but it's very risky to get 3 out of your first 5 picks on starting pitchers. And I see a lot of people, I can see that happening a lot this year. So this is where it's important to have guys you really like Corbin Burns, Max Fried, Ian Anderson, who I have way higher than consensus. Here I have Jose Abreu, probably 40 ranks lower than where they had him. Austin Slater, when I ran the numbers and downloaded the Excel spreadsheet from Fangraphs, I was really surprised to see Austin Slater. Admittedly, I don't even think I heard about him this year. Dude had a 407 on base percentage with a 270, 280 average this year. 8 stolen bases, 1 caught stealing. You'd multiply that by 3. We're talking 20 stolen bases, 25, 30 home runs. Austin Slater, 27. I think the Giants maybe are a little ahead of curve than people think. They have guys like Austin Slater, Alex Dickerson too. Not going to steal bases, but he's shown that his bat skill has stepped up to have some power, which I always thought could be a possibility with him and Corey Dickerson. Austin Slater, Corey Dickerson on the Giants. Keep an eye on them. Dylan Moore on the Mariners. Dylan Moore could be a 25-25 guy. I think he may have stole 11 stolen bases last year. Times that by 3, that's 30 stolen bases. And he probably had 8 or 9 home runs. So he's easily 30-30 if everything goes right. Low end 2020. I mean, Dylan Moore is definitely a guy you want to target. Here's a big cluster of starting pitchers. Zach Gallen, Jack Flaherty, Zach Greinke, Kenta Maeda. Out of all these guys, I've never seen Zach Gallen pitch. I hear a lot about him on Twitter. I hear a lot about him in the fantasy community. Never watched him pitch, so I'm not really enamored with him. Jack Flaherty is a guy who I have seen pitch. I'm not really a big Jack Flaherty guy. I don't really think I think he might end up being a bullpen guy, honestly. I don't really see. I don't see the it factor. I feel like he struggles. He labors. I could be wrong about Flaherty. I'm really just not a big Flaherty guy. Never really was. Don't think I ever am going to be. I think maybe it's because I remember getting in arguments and draft chats with people maybe last year or 2 years before where Jack Flaherty was going 15th overall. I don't know if you guys know. He was going 15th overall last year and the year before in some drafts. And I just found it kind of crazy. And so maybe I'm just kind of championing that too much and saying I was right. So he's done now. But maybe this is a great buy low on Jack Flaherty. But, I have him at 72nd. Consensus ADP has him at 37. Consensus ADP has Jack Flaherty at 37th. That's why I feel the way I do. He's not at a discounted price, really. I don't think you're really getting a deal on him yet, honestly. Carlos Correa, get him at 74th. They have him at, I don't know where they have him at. They have Carlos Carrasco here. I'm a little hesitant with Carlos Carrasco. I hate to bring stuff like this up, but it scares me with a guy that went through what he went through. I don't know if you know he struggled with cancer. I think I hate bringing this up in a guy's fantasy baseball thing. Trust me, I hate this, but it's something you got to keep in mind. That's a risk. I've never heard any other fantasy baseball analyst talk about that before, but that is without a doubt a risk factor. Unfortunately, that stuff sometimes never goes away. It's always something that these guys have to worry about, and it's frankly not something I want to be worrying about on my fantasy baseball team. a guy going into having to come back. I hate talking about this, but it's just something that has to be said. It's a risk factor, and like I said earlier, I want high floors, low ceilings, and that has to be taken into account. Here we have Gleyber Torres, Anthony Rizzo, Kyle Hendricks, Alex Dickerson. Kyle Hendricks, I'm taking all freaking day. I think he was going 120 last year. Now he's probably worked his way up to about 80th. Zach Greinke too. Had a 4 ERA this year. I'm the biggest Zach Greinke guy, and he's going cheaper than he ever has. But I don't think he likes playing for Houston. I don't even think it's about him not being good anymore. I don't think he likes playing for Houston. If he gets traded in the offseason, I'll hop back on that train, but I don't think he likes being there. It's not a great ballpark to pitch in for him either. He needs a bigger ballpark. That left field porch does not help a guy who's throwing 88. Luke Voigt, I'm not touching. I have him 40 ranks lower than consensus. Gleyber Torres also I'm a little worried about. Gleyber Torres. Doesn't really have a position right now, so that's always a concern. Dickerson, I think I mentioned earlier, not going to steal bases, but he's shown that he's a solid hitter. Luke Voigt, first base eligibility only. I don't like Luke Voigt at all. 330 on base percentage, with leading league in home runs. That's like Chris Davis with a K and Chris Davis with a C. You know what that means? He can go down just as quick as he went up. Very risky profile. Here we're getting into the relievers for once. I have Edwin Diaz as my number 1 ranked reliever, only because I'm not really sure what's going on with Josh Hader and the Brewers, and with the Mets because they made that trade. I mean, this is for a saves league. I mean, this is for a 5x5 saves league. You don't get nothing for holds. Holds don't mean jack crap in a saves league. Yeah, you can have a guy. Your ratio guys are gonna go post pick 200, post pick 250. So Edwin Diaz I like because the Mets made that trade, because they gave Kanellick up. It's kind of the equivalent of them paying Edwin Diaz $15 million a year. He has to be the closer, Edwin Diaz. And I'm not worried about Seth Lugo closing anymore. But Seth Lugo is a guy I'll talk about in a later video. You want him on your teams if the value's right. But Diaz, I think, lockdown closer position, bounce back year, still a young guy. I hate to make comps, but he could be this generation's Craig Kimbrell, this generation's Wade Davis. He's going to be one of those guys maybe for the next 10 years. So I definitely want Diaz. I hate paying for relievers, but unfortunately I've learned you have to. I find myself struggling in saves year after year because I'm so scared to pay the price for these guys. And there's something to be said for not wanting to pay the price, because if you paid the price for Edwin Diaz the year before, you were screwed. So it's not that you just draft the earliest reliever. I will discuss that maybe for a later video. But I just want to point out why Josh Hader isn't my number 1 overall reliever. Also, Josh Hader kind of had a bad year this year for his standards. But with Josh Hader, they have Devin Williams in that bullpen. I would personally rather have Devin Williams than Josh Hader. So when you're in your draft room and Josh Hader gets taken, if I were you, that means I draft Devin Williams. I would wait. A lot of this stuff. I'm trying to get this video out early because I want to get feedback. I want to get my thoughts out there. I want to get your thoughts to me. I want to hear what the industry's thinking, what players are thinking. But it's extremely hard to organize your draft strategy and organize your rankings when so little of ADP is known, when we're coming off a shortened season, when we don't know if the National League is going to have a DH. There's a lot of unknown variables in play this season. Unfortunately, though, that's just what it is. But it kind of makes it more fun. I think variability is what you got to capitalize this year. You have to capitalize on reaching for guys, on being. If one thing I learned from last year to this year, from doing these YouTube videos and then playing fantasy, was that a lot of my late picks. One thing I really want to focus on, again, like I did last year, is post 150, or maybe I'll do post pick 200. As much as I'm going over these picks right now and all this, I don't think your team lives and dies in these first 100 picks. I think all these guys on your draft board, the first 100 picks, more or less, obviously there's some guys who are more costly than others, but more or less, and everyone I mentioned today, at least that I specifically pointed out, if you go with those guys, your team's not going to live or die by them. Your team lives or dies by who you pick after pick 100, pick 150, pick 200. When it's really hard to find diamond in the roughs. If you picked Eric Hosmer last year, if you picked Jesse Winker last year, guys that I told you to pick, that really would have helped your team. And they were going to pick 220 to pick 250. Brendan Nimmo. I was talking about Michael Conforto. He was going around pick 100 something. I was one of the only guys that heard talking about Corey Seager. Was going to pick 120. Kyle Hendricks. I was talking about him all the time. Pick 130. There's some guys like Dylan Cease didn't pan out, but I see Dylan Cease ranked higher than I expected actually this year. Dylan Cease is probably a 50th ranked starting pitcher. He's kind of on the map now. So only got a couple more guys to talk about, but I just wanted to talk about draft strategy because I don't think these rankings. I don't want to compartmentalize it into rankings and positionals and then draft strategy. Every video I do is going to discuss draft strategy. Fantasy baseball does not exist on an island. Every fantasy team is drafted. You have to draft your teams. These rankings mean nothing if they're not within the context of a fantasy draft, if they're not compared to other players and the players' values in a draft. It really is all about the draft. And I know I could be rambling. Some of you, if you don't like this kind of rambling style, I get it. But from a big consumer of fantasy baseball content, I find the discussion of draft, the lack of discussion of draft and draft strategy, pretty startling. I just think, I guess what happens is it's an industry, and these podcasts have to produce content. They have to have 2 podcasts a week, 3 podcasts a week, or CBS, 5 podcasts a week. And within those daily podcasts, I think they become more about baseball and the players and tangential stuff than actually about winning your fantasy league. I think it becomes too much about, honestly, pointless discussion. If you're not talking about the draft and player comps and where value, the one word I'm going to go back to is value, where value is made and where value is lost. If you're not talking about that in every single video and every single piece of content produced, then you're not really helping the fantasy baseball players win their leagues. You're really just filling airtime. It's just kind of what it is. It's filling airtime. It's selling advertisements. There's no advertisements on this channel. I'm here to make you guys better fantasy players, not to sell airtime, not to spend 5 hours a week running my mouth so that I can sell $500 worth of advertisements. Think of that what you will. So another guy I want to talk about, Brian Anderson, had a great season for the Marlins. Saw him a little bit in the postseason, of course, but he looks pretty good. He's a little older, 28, so he's not going to be some crazy breakout or nothing. But I just wanted to pinpoint Brian Anderson. Looks pretty solid. Had a decent on base. Good pop in that bat, 30 home run pop, and the 280 hitter. He just looks solid. Brandon Nimmo, of course, not a favorite in the Roto League community because of the lack of batting average. I probably have him higher than he deserves, but I think I want that because you need to have him on your team. You're not going to draft him 88 overall, but you're not going to draft him 200. He was going 200, 250 last year. He was worth way more than that. He gets on base at a 400 clip in a full season. He's going to get you 90 runs. And he probably gets you 15 stolen bases. I think there's more stolen bases in Brandon Nimmo than we've seen. He's a fast guy. I think him and Ahmed Rosario have the potential to steal 20 bases. Rosario's not on this list, I don't think. But keep an eye on Brandon Nimmo. James Karinchak was the closer for the Indians. He was a big fat guy on Twitter. A lot of people talked about him. James Karinchak's definitely going to have that role. Keep your eye on him. Will Myers, I believe in Will Myers. I think that was legit. But be careful. I'm personally probably not going to draft him on my teams because you don't want to overpay for a career year. Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert, I kind of lump into my head. Not going to lie, it's kind of hard to separate those guys. They both came on at the same time. Luis Robert's going a lot earlier, I believe, than Eloy Jimenez. Not really a fan of either of those guys. I kind of compared him to Tatis and Baez, and it might be something with these Latino guys. They're kind of swinging out of their shoe guys. Javi Baez, 83rd overall. There's something where it's like these teams aren't really trying to teach them play discipline. If these guys go to the Dodgers, they would become the best hitters in baseball because the Dodgers know how to take walks. The Dodgers turned Max Muncy, a nobody, into one of the best hitters in baseball. I don't know why. Ahmed Rosario is a perfect example. Ahmed Rosario has the tools, but he can't seem to lay off those sliders in the dirt. My biggest thing is if I see a guy like Baez or Rosario or Eloy Jimenez or Luis Robert, constantly swinging at sliders in the dirt, yeah, you're not going to be on my fantasy team. I don't care if you're stealing 30 bases or 40 stolen bases. That's just a big no-no. You can't have guys that whose eyes aren't at a major league elite caliber. Instead, you could take a Brian Anderson or Nick Castellanos or a Wilmer Flores. Wilmer Flores has always been a 280 hitter in his league, in the MLB. He's always been a 280 hitter. I think Wilmer Flores has room to grow from what he's shown in 2020. For those who don't know, he's on a 35 homer pace. With maybe 290 average, 340 on base, nothing crazy on base department. But Flores has always had good bat-to-ball skills. And I look for bat-to-ball skills. That's my biggest thing is bat-to-ball skills. And Flores is without a doubt a great 5x5 roto player. Not the same in points leagues. Chris Bryant, interesting guy. Chris Bryant had a horrible year, and I hope he comes back. But I would be remiss I'm talking about guys swinging sliders in the dirt. Chris Bryant was swinging at anything. It could bounce 10 feet before the plate. For those who just weren't watching games this year, for one reason or another, it was a busy year. Bryant looks like he might have just lost it. It looks like someone took his mojo. It looks like he just forgot how to hit. Never seen a clear-cut example. A guy was a Rookie of the Year, MVP. Just looks like he forgot how to hit. So keep your eye on Chris Bryant. If he falls, I would say below pick 100. You want to hop on him. But, when I first thought about Chris Bryant doing bad, I was like, I definitely want to have him on my teams. I kind of got duped by him last year. I thought, no way he's as bad as he was in 2019 and 2020. He was even worse. So keep your eye on Chris Bryant. Ryan Presley is probably going to be my first drafted reliever, with Roberto Osuna being injured probably for all of next season. I've always liked Presley. He was always a guy I targeted late in drafts. Probably mentioned him last year. Ryan Presley's probably my number one drafted reliever. Nelson Cruz I have later than the consensus has him. That's just because, honestly, he's a great hitter. He's not stealing you literally any bases, and he's going to fall off one day. He's 42. I know people say this every year, but I think I said it about Patrick Corbin last year. Patrick Corbin was going around round 3, round 4 last year. I said there's no way I'm touching him. I don't even see him on the consensus ADP so far. 105. Okay. Funny, that's why I probably brought his name up. Nelson Cruz could easily drop off this year. Doesn't steal you any bases, but he is a great hitter. It's kind of hard to argue with Nelson Cruz. At this point, it's been a 5-year argument against Nelson Cruz, kind of run its course. Devin Williams mentioned before. I haven't ranked higher than Josh Hader. I don't think I have Hader ranked here. Liam Hendricks is going to be a very popular pick. I'm a little scared of him just because he got so much hype. He reminds me of someone else the Athletics had. Lou Trevino. I could easily see this being a Lou Trevino scenario with Liam Hendricks. I hope it's not. Lance Lynn's a guy I have to bring up just because of the innings. He is a workhorse, and in a shortened season that we had in 2020, a lot of guys are going to be question marks for innings. Lance Lynn will not be a question mark. Marco Gonzalez neither will be a question mark. He's not going to get you the strikeouts that Lance Lynn will. But 2020 was definitely a striking year for Marco Gonzalez. He pitches in a great ballpark. He's not going to get you, of course, maybe 8 Ks per 9, maybe not even that. Amazing whip. Definitely pair Marco Gonzalez with a strikeout pitcher. If Marco Gonzalez is your 4th or 5th drafted starting pitcher, okay, I'll say this. He probably can't be your 5th drafted starting pitcher. But if Marco Gonzalez is your 5th best starting pitcher, you're probably going to win all your starting pitcher categories, and you really just got to focus on your bullpen. Very high floor, not at the highest ceiling. Some people wouldn't want Marco Gonzalez and Kyle Hendricks on their team because strikeouts is a category, but so is ERA and WHIP, and so is innings pitched, I believe. So keep that in mind. They're going to get you 200 innings. Lance Lynn, Kyle Hendricks, Marco Gonzalez. That'd be an interesting back 3 for your rotation. You're going to have to pay hefty draft capital for that. But that's why I was saying I want my 3 of my after pick 4 from pick 5 to pick 9. I want to draft 3 starting pitchers. So I definitely want to get one of Kyle Hendricks, Lance Lynn, Marco Gonzalez, Corbin Burns, and then maybe Ryan Presley or Edwin Diaz. Pick 100, I have Framber Valdez. Rookie, not too much to talk about there, but he looks legit. He's probably going to be the Astros ace from now on. They just seem to produce starting pitchers. Keep an eye on any of the guys for the Astros in spring training. They're definitely going to have some guys coming up. Remember they had a big guy, Forrest Whitley. Not sure what's going on with him right now. Just gonna scroll on the list and kind of show you. I obviously have a. This is my top 100. So I'm gonna have a 100 to 200 and a 200 to 300, maybe even a 300 to 400. Probably have that done somewhere between now and January. Maybe get one out a month. I just wanted to show you guys, the list I have so far. Some names I'm thinking about: Kebron Hayes, Andrew Stevenson for the Nationals. I'm a little worried about Victor Robles, so I could see maybe Stevenson honestly taking over that starting job. He's 27, a little older, but Robles looks a little scarier now. Victor Robles, guy I was really high on. Kyle Schwarber didn't have a crazy year, and I was a big Kyle Schwarber guy. I'll admit it. I said to draft Kyle Schwarber. He didn't really do much for your team. Jose Barrios is a pitcher he's not sexy. He's not really a high ceiling pitcher, but he's a really high floor. Really high floor. He's gonna get you the innings. I like Jose Barrios a lot. Keston Hiura, funny enough, didn't like him at all last year. He was going like 35 to 40th. I thought it was one of the most egregious examples of the fantasy baseball industry, kind of all hyping one guy up, where it almost seemed like it was like a synergistic kind of thing, where this guy this is something that I for those that follow fantasy baseball, you'll really get what I'm talking about. It does feel like that because CBS or because Yahoo or because ESPN or because I guess Fangraphs, RotoWire or RotoBall, because one of these outlets or one of these writers, one of these analysts has a player high, all the other analysts kind of look around and they say, oh, if they have him at 35, I'll look stupid for not having him at 35. I don't buy into that. That's why maybe I'll have some guys here that look ridiculous in my rankings, like having Austin Slater at 50th or Corbin Burns so early. I'll have some picks that look stupid. But I think it's important that your picks are original. Because maybe the biggest thing the internet has done is it's allowed groupthink to seep into every aspect of life. And if you start allowing, if you're picking your fantasy baseball draft down a pre-made list that every other player in your draft is looking at, you're not going to get any value. Consensus will not give you an edge. You get an edge by finding niche guys, like I'm going to say niche guys like me that aren't following the whole industry on guys like Keston Hiura, because it does seem like the industry agrees. Oh, Keston Hiura is going to be 35th overall next year, so you got to pick him at 35th overall. You would have been better off drafting Luis Arias last year over Keston Hiura. It's just crazy how much helium. That's the word I was looking for. How much it's kind of like conflated helium, where it's like one guy has them, so they all kind of have to get on board and they don't want to make each other look stupid. They have to show that they're legitimate industries. They have to show they're a legitimate fantasy baseball source. So then, okay, I have Keston Hiura, you have Keston Hiura. Make sure you have Keston Hiura. I wasn't on board the Keston Hiura hype, so I have him at 120th. If you can get him, I would say 7th round or later. The strikeouts were always a concern with him, and no one wanted to talk about that. Bat to ball skills is the biggest way. Having a guy with bad bat to ball skills in the first 10 rounds is the easiest way to screw up your draft. If you have a guy who just can't get the bat on the ball, man, and he just has a crap season, hits 190, that's really killing your draft. I would rather have a guy with empty batting average than a guy who's giving me 30 home runs with a 190 batting average, because the 300 batting average is being able to get some runs and RBIs. He's getting on base. It's about how the categories kind of compound. If you're not getting on base, if you're not getting hits, you're not really getting a lot of runs, RBIs, and home runs. Just to end it right here, Dansby Swanson, Marcus Semien. I wasn't sure how to rank him. Again, I wasn't really high on Marcus Semien as the consensus was. He was a kind of a career year guy. He didn't have a bad year, I don't think, but he's 30. He's just, Dansby Swanson was the first overall pick. He could be one of the best shortstops in baseball. So, and I was never a big Swanson guy, but keep your eye on Swanson, Tristan McKenzie, Jesus Luzardo, Tony Gonsolin, Victor Robles. I mentioned earlier. I'm probably going to move him down, honestly. These are kind of just guys I ended up listing. This won't look the same when you see it in the next video. And Jerickson Profar. I'm just going to go down their list a little bit. Dylan Bundy. Jeff McNeil. They have Jeff McNeil at 116. I have Jeff McNeil at 50th overall. That's absurd to me. I don't get that. Dave Winker 119. I had him at 60th. That's fair. I have Pablo Lopez accurate. I think that's fair at Winker. I think maybe Winker's probably more in the middle with an 80th overall. Jose Altuve at 122 is crazy. I'll tell you this: no one is going to be drafting Jose Altuve at 122 in your fantasy drafts. It's just not going to happen. And I doubt you're going to be able to get Chris Bryant at 124th. So this is great right here. So this is where this is called. I know it's called a way too early mock, and this could change a lot, but it's very, very hard to imagine a scenario where you guys are in fantasy baseball leagues and people in your leagues are waiting until pick 122 to draft Jose Altuve, where Ryan Mountcastle is going higher than Jose Altuve and Chris Bryant. You know, a good analogy to anyone that's into stocks is Jose Altuve and Chris Bryant are blue chip stocks. They have name in their names. There's value. They have MVPs. These guys have MVPs to their name. I mean, maybe Jose Altuve didn't win that 1 year to Judge, but he could have easily won it. I mean, these are guys who, for a couple years, we were talking about being on a Hall of Fame trajectory. They have 1.5 bad years in a freaking global pandemic, and they're going to pick 122. If you can get Jose Altuve and Chris Bryant in that range, you definitely want to take some maybe pitchers earlier then. And if you can get Jeff McNeil, I'm very excited to draft next year with all of this hitting value post pick 100. Alex Bohm, pick 129. He should be going earlier. Not even going to talk about a Rosarena right now. Just too ridiculous with all the helium. Marco Gonzalez, I had at 100. They have him at 137th. Julio Urias, I don't think I had him. I have to add him to my list. Definitely an interesting guy. Ian Anderson, okay, that's where I'll stop it. And Dylan Moore. I had Ian Anderson at 50th and Dylan Moore at maybe 60th. Two guys that I'll end the video on. Ian Anderson and Dylan Moore. Consensus has them going around pick 145. I have them going between pick 50 and pick 60. At the end of the 2021 season, I want to know who was closer, me or them. I want to see where they end up finishing your Roto Leagues. Message me when the season's over, when you're watching this next year, and let me know who was closer. The way too early mock drafts by the industry leaders, by the guys who get paid, who make their living off of doing fantasy baseball analysis, or the kid making a video off his laptop in his room. Check me out on Twitter at Fantasy Base Show. Link will be in the description. Check me out on Instagram at The Fantasy Baseball Show. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and have a good one.